Hi, in this video we will go through the process of enabling multi-language sites in Sitecore XM Cloud. We will cover quickly how to add a new language, configure fallback functionality in template items, set up our Next.js application to display content in the newly added language, and finally a tip of how to patch a configuration file in XM Cloud to enable fallback across the entire environment. So let's get started. I have my local environment running with Dockers. After that, the first thing that we have to do is to add languages to our site. So let's go to the content tree and the system item and languages. As you can see, we have only English. It means that all our items in Sitecore will have only the English language. So let's go to again the languages, right click, insert, and insert the language. So I will pick a couple of new languages. So Spanish, next, the language has been added. And let's try German. Next and next. With these easy steps, we have added two new languages to our site. How we can realize that those languages are inserted? We will see here that we don't have only English, we have Spanish and German, but with zero versions. Sitecore allows us to create content in any language. But what happens if the page doesn't have content in the current language? In such cases, we need to present something to the user. This is where fallback functionality comes into play. To enable that, we have to go to the template of the item, in this case, page template. We have to go to the standard values item of the template and go to the advanced section and enable item fallback. As you see, it led us to display the item from fallback language if no language version exists. The final step to configure the fallback functionality in Sitecore is to tell it what will be the fallback language of each language that has no content. For doing that, we have to go to the content tree and system and languages items. So let's check for German. The fallback language will be here in this field. I will pick English. Save. And let's do it also for Spanish. With these steps, we have finished the configuration of fallback functionality. Once we have created the languages and the fallback functionality in Sitecore, we want to create content in those languages. Let's see, for example, home. The home page will have only versions in English. So let's create a version in Spanish. As you see, these two languages has the fallback version. But let's create a version here in Spanish. For doing that, we pick the language and we have here a new version. Or here we have to this button to create version. So let's add a version and that's it. We have now a version in Spanish. So the logical step is to go to the home page and go to that version. but we have that problem. But here we have a cool tip. We have to go to our code and let's find the next.js config file. Go to head apps, and here we have next.config.ts file. Here in this line, we have the locales languages. So we have to add here those ones that we had created before. In this case, Spanish, Ecuador, and German. Save that file, and you will see our container will restart. So it is compiling again, and our site is compiling. As you see, it is trying to load something. It loads the page. We have no error. We have no 404 page. It means that the site found this page. Let's see, in English, here have it is, but in Spanish and German. We have here in German page not found because we don't have content on a version. Let's create one. It's in German home and add new version, and let's see. Okay, so if I click here, it resolves the German page but with no content. This happens because the fallback functionality is not working in our side. It's configured in Sitecore, but for some reason it's not working or it's not enabled in our environment. So in the Sitecore official documentation, we have here this thing. We have to patch this file or this config file to change these values language fallback from false to true. That is what we are going to do now. In our XM Cloud Foundation head code folder, we have a Visual Studio solution. So I am going to open that solution with my Visual Studio here, XM Cloud Foundation head, authoring, and here we have that solution. Let's open it, and we have here the solution and the project platform. So normally we patch files in Sitecore, adding here in this app config include or in the specific path that that file it is. So we are going to create this. We're going to create this structure, app config Sitecore services.graphql. So let's do it. App config, right click, add new folder. It's services. But it says the system cannot find the path specified. So what happened here? We can't create those folders because physically there is no folder here. So let's go to the system file system in my computer, and here in authoring, when we have the platform, I am going to create those folders. New folder. Sitecore services that GraphQL. Now we have created this. Let's go to our Visual Studio and create that exact structure here. App config, Sitecore, services that GraphQL. And here we are going to create that file, web configuration file. We're going to create with that name and OK. We have to change these entries for those that Sitecore accepts for patching files. So let's do this. And then we have to paste the configuration that the documentation says. Here. And then we have to change this for true. After that, we have to save this and publish this file. But before doing that, we have to check first the config file before the change. So let's go to the control panel, to administration tools, and show config. And let's find this. Okay, as we can see here, we have these values to false. So let's patch it. Here I have two tips what works for me. The first one is that always we have this patching system that takes the config files in an order that XM Cloud wants or it's configured. So if we put here in this folders a letter Z and here also a letter C, we assure that these patch files will get to the end or at the end. So these values will be patched in a good way. Another tip in the publish is to assure that this folder will work. So for me, I have in my local environment this path. So here I assure that the deployment will have and where we'll have the path where the dockers will take the information for the patching file. Okay, let's save it and this let's publish. So it succeed and we have here the files that I want. Sorry, it's not this one, the one. Okay, so let's restart our containers and see what happened. Okay, after our dockers restarted, we can see now here our Sitecore, and let's check the config file. It was false, so let's restart. Let's refresh this page and let's see what happens. Meanwhile, our render is starting also, and let's check. Here we have our entry with the value true, so it was patched successfully, and now we have our site. Let's see what happened if I go to the Spanish or German versions. Remember that we have an empty page here, so let's try it in Spanish. So check. Now we have our fallback version, and for German also. So patch, um, our patching worked. So I'm very happy for that. So finally, to check our patching, let's go to our Visual Studio and let's see the containers window. Let's go to the CM files and let's see the app config environment. So I set in Sitecore, and here we have our file. So here, this is the value that it was patched. So after that, finally we have our goal achieved. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.